So we know JRPGs inspired my channel, but what exactly about them made me love these games so much? Well, the majority is the gameplay and the combat. They really interest me. And today, I want to bring you guys 10 RPGs that just have absolutely amazing combat systems. I would recognize them as 10 out of 10. Maybe they got like one or two minor things about them that have issues, but most of the time when you hop on these games, you have an amazing combat system to dive into. I like to take everything into consideration: how well balanced the game is, are the super bosses really good, how is the pacing when you're leveling up your characters and learning new abilities. Basically, I love these games to death for their combat system, so hopefully you guys find some new games you could try. The number 10 spot goes to Nier Automata, and while this game may not be as deep as some of the other combat systems on this list, it is extremely fluid, and Platinum Games honestly peaked here in my opinion. Everything is really easy to pick up, but then you could do some really cool stuff if you're good at the game. I also really love the bullet hell aspect. It's cool that you have to focus on ranged attacks as well as close range. There's plenty of variety in weaponry too, which switches up your combos, and when you actually change to different characters, you're gonna have some differences in your combat style. I always loved the mob enemies, and then when the bosses came up, they were always a joy to fight, and at the end of it all, you're looking hot while you're doing it. The number 9 spot goes to Kingdom Hearts 2, and wow, did they hit a banger back in 2005. Honestly, it's the amount of useful variety with this game. There is so many different mechanics you can use, and the game wants you to utilize them. You hear a lot of people praise Kingdom Hearts 2, and it's for this reason. Everyone's combat style looks differently when they take on bosses and stuff, and everything can be used in certain scenarios. There's also revenge value, which in my opinion is one of the best design decisions ever for an action game. It makes Sora and all the bosses feel like you're on the same playing field. There's a back and forth to it, which is actually simulating a fight. Revenge value basically means as you're comboing the boss, eventually he's going to retaliate back at you, so you have to watch out for that. But this is great because the stagger system is so good. Whenever you're actually hitting enemies, they're flinching and stuff, so it makes it really good, and the feedback to the player is always super fun. Now pair that with an incredibly balanced critical mode that had a lot of time and care put into it, around 15 super bosses that are going to test your skill, and you have one of the best action RPGs ever created. So this list is not action only. When I say combat system, it could be anything from tactics to turn-based to action. So I'm highlighting ones I think are just a plain 10 out of 10 awesome. So for the number 8 spot, it is Persona 5 Royal. And this is honestly not insanely deep. Like, you got your weaknesses you're looking out for, and then you got your baton pass that they added. But the fun comes in the style, like the way you're recruiting personas, the way the animations and everything look when you're actually playing the game. This game gets people who don't like JRPGs to enjoy turn-based combat. It just shows you do not need the most in-depth combat system in the world. If all your mechanics are balanced really good and it's just in general very fun to pretty much do anything in the game, it's a very good combat system. Pair that with the social links and everything, how you're able to get abilities in the real world back when you go into the dungeons. I love it. The number 7 spot goes to Fire Emblem Engage. And wow, this is seriously one of the best tactic RPG systems I've ever played. Now, this is not one of my fortes like action or turn-based. This is probably the least amount I've tried, and I tried to go in the Fire Emblem Engage on maddening mode, right? And this game whooped my ass. All the areas and levels are really intricately designed. I absolutely love how this game expects you to know strategy combat if you're playing on the harder modes. Like, it's very gameplay focused. You see a lot of people kind of talk about they didn't really enjoy the story and stuff, but the gameplay is really good. That's because it really does shine. Like, I think the story is honestly pretty good. It's just this game's combat is the best part about it. You have this emblem system which shows you all the old Fire Emblem characters through the series history, and it adds a bunch of diverse ways to strategize and edit your team. One of the funnest tactics strategy combat systems I've played. The number 6 spot goes to Dragon Quest XI. Now, remember earlier when I said simplicity does not equal bad? Well, with this, you can't get much more simple than Dragon Quest turn-based combat. But here with Dragon Quest XI and your pep abilities, it's so much fun. So you have so many buffs and debuffs by the end. There's so many strategies and routes you can take, and these bosses towards the end of the game will challenge you. I also love every animation in this game. So with Persona, it's like you're watching all this stylized comic book flair. But with this game, it's like you're watching a Pixar cutscene or something. Every single one of these pep abilities are so fun to watch, and there's an incredible amount of variation between your party members. The number 5 spot goes the Star Ocean, the Divine Force. Now, I must say, this is the least refined system on this list, but everything about it is so much fun, and it will flow together once you get the combat down. So the funnest part about Divine Force's combat is you're in the air a lot of the time. You're flying around, and with this Duma drone, it's a new type of way to perfect dodge, and I love games where, let's say your party's down and you're the last one alive. You could take on the boss yourself if you're good enough. This game is all about that. You edit your combos the way you like them, and then with this Duma drone, you could kind of just keep the enemy off guard, and I really enjoyed it. When you get to the post-game dungeons and you're fighting the super bosses, you have to get this mechanic down, and it was a breath of fresh air for action RPG combat systems. I've not played something like this in a while. The number 4 spot is Lies of P. Now, I do gotta say, this is a Souls-like as well as an RPG, so you're gonna get your ass whooped, but I encourage anyone who hasn't tried any Souls games to actually give this a try. The story is more straightforward, but let's get over to the combat, which is about this video, and it's one of my favorites of all time after I've got through the game. The boss design is so spectacular in my opinion. It's all about keeping the pressure on them as they keep the pressure on you. And it has the most satisfying, perfect parry sound I've ever heard. It is literally like crack. It takes so much skill to use. And if you're a Souls player, you know how annoying it could be sometimes when you want to use a certain weapon, but it doesn't scale with the stats that you've been upgrading, right? Well, this game has a super cool mechanic where you could take the hilt of any sword or weapon and flip it on something else, which basically means, let's say this axe has an E in dexterity, right? And you're all about strength. Well, you could take the hilt of something else, put it on it, and now this axe is going to act as a strength axe. So there's a lot of customization here. You have your puppet arm, which does a whole bunch of cool things with elemental powers. Absolute 10 out of 10 combat system. The number 3 spot goes the Tales of Xillia 2. Now, the Tales series really excels in making each party member through each of the games feel very distinct and have a lot of depth of their own, right? But with this game, the main character Ludger, he has so many mechanics added just for him that you're gonna mostly be playing him most of the time, but there's so much depth to it. He could actually swap weapons, which I think is so cool. You'll go from dual pistols to a hammer back to a sword. And this is really cool because of the way the weaknesses work. If you're able to chain them together and keep doing the weaknesses that the enemies have, you can keep a combo going. And as you're just swapping through each of the weapons, it is so cool to watch the combos in action, and it takes a lot of skill. And then you have your Chromatus, which is a little bit broken, but again, it's this power fantasy of the main character just having so many cool mechanics on their side to use. So I love going into superhero mode. It always saves me from dying in some instances. And let's say you want to just go back to playing all the characters of Tales, right? Swapping through all the teammates. They all, again, have their depth of their own, and I think it's really good in this game. Xillia 2 is a lot of dodging and guarding and when to go for your enemy's opening, so I really enjoyed the Xillia 2 combat. For all its flaws it may have, the combat system I think is just perfect. The number 2 spot goes the Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Donna. Now, the entire Ys series has fantastic action combat. Like, I could even put 9 on this list. I chose 8 because that is what I have the most experience with and did every boss and everything, and it's a really fast game. If you like to feel cracked out and really go for a lot of reflexes type of thing, this is the game for you. The character swapping is so fast that you're going to be looking for weaknesses and going really in on an enemy. You could perfect parry pretty much instantaneously, so even if you're in the air or in a situation where you normally would be stuck, this game lets you do it. It lets you cancel out of pretty much any combo, and it's just, again, very fast, so you're gonna have to be paying a lot of attention, especially for the endgame bosses, but it's a lot of fun. It's almost like getting off of a damn roller coaster when you finish a boss in this game. The number 1 spot goes the Kingdom Hearts 3, my personal favorite action RPG combat system of all time. Now, there's 2 types of people, in my opinion, if you really haven't delved deep into the combat of this game. One, you played it on launch and you kind of just put the game down, never touched it ever again, or you're someone who hasn't even tried it and you just heard from your favorite YouTuber that it's not as good as KH2. While Kingdom Hearts 3, while the base game did have some fantastic combat, didn't fully come into its form until after a few updates, the DLC, and that is because they dropped some of the best bosses I've ever seen created in video game history. The amount of movesets these bosses have that you have to learn are pretty staggering, and you have to be intuitive with how you approach them. Some of them are not just dodge this move and start attacking the boss. Then they added a bunch of combo modifiers that made Sora just really fast and smooth, way more than the base game, but the potential was always there, and once they unleashed it all, it was just so much fun. Kingdom Hearts 3 has a lot more crazy movement than 2. You could skydive and slam the ground, you could fly around the map a lot faster, and this game, while it has more options than 2, it's a little sloppier, right? You're not going to use everything in 3. Looking at you, attraction rides, throw that in the trash. But everything else, like the Keyblade transformations, the new wrist guard dodge, and the perfect parrying where you glow red and get yourself crit damage, it is all so good. And if you look at the bosses here, it has that flow that Kingdom Hearts 2 had, and they bumped it up to a new level in my opinion because it's faster, it's crazier, and it just took a little bit to get into that form. So if you honestly slept on KH3 and you love games for their combat systems and gameplay, you need to try the critical mode and especially the DLC if you guys are able to get it. I can't recommend it more. Well guys, those are 10 RPGs I think have 10 out of 10 combat systems. Again, there's no particular order to that list and these are all my opinions, but hopefully you guys agree. If you don't, you can yell at me in the comments, bring some discussion, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video nonetheless and have a fantastic rest of your day for yourselves. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.